Hey everyone, it's really good to see you today. A lot of you have been asking what's going on with this whole $2,000 stimulus check idea and whether it's actually happening before Christmas. And honestly, I get why this is on everyone's mind. Money is tight. Prices feel like they're going up every week, and you hear the president talking about checks and tariffs and dividends and all that. And it's natural to wonder if something real is on the way, especially during the holidays. But here's something interesting that most people don't know. President Trump actually already addressed the timing of these checks himself. And what he said surprised a lot of people. And, there's also a pretty important detail about how much tariff money the country has actually collected so far and how that compares to how much these checks would cost. And that part is going to raise some eyebrows when we get to it. So, yeah, stick with me because the picture is a little different from what you might have been seeing online. I read through all the statements and reports so you don't have to, and I'm going to give you the straight truth about what's really happening. Before we get further, though, let me ask you something simple. If a check like this were real, what would be one thing you'd want to use it for? It could be anything: groceries, bills, a little breathing room, whatever it is. Share it down below. I like hearing your stories, and other people do too. Let's talk about this $2,000 check. A lot of people have been calling it a tariff dividend because the whole idea is that the money for these checks would come from tariffs that President Trump wants to collect on imports, not taxes on you, but taxes on foreign goods coming in. And he's talked about this for a while now, even during the campaign. So it's not some brand new thing he suddenly brought up. The basic idea is the government brings in money from tariffs, and instead of putting it all toward the debt or general spending, some of it would be turned into a cash payment for what he calls middle income Americans. Now, here's where things start getting confusing for people. Over the last couple weeks, there have been a ton of posts online, headlines, videos, all saying things like checks coming before Christmas or IRS preparing payments, and you see those and you think, okay, maybe something changed. But this is the important part. There is no bill, no legislation, no IRS program, nothing official that allows any $2,000 check to go out in 2025. The IRS even put out statements saying they aren't sending any new payments because there is no new law. And Trump himself said it pretty clearly just a few days ago. Someone asked him if the checks would come this year, and he said, no, not this year, next year sometime. And also when he said next, when he said year, he didn't even mean early next year. He suggested it would probably be closer to the middle of the year or even a little later. And then he hinted that the timing could line up before the midterms in 2026. And when a president ties a benefit to an election year, people notice. It doesn't automatically mean anything bad, but it does make folks wonder whether this is more of a long-range promise than an immediate plan. Speaking of which, it also reminds a lot of people of those pandemic stimulus checks where the idea sounded simple, but the process behind the scenes took a ton of debate, paperwork, rulemaking, and IRS logistics. Even when there's political will to get something done, the government moves slowly. That's just reality. So when you look at his comments about reducing the debt, that's another piece that complicates this idea because sending checks usually increases the deficit unless the money is already sitting somewhere ready to use. Another thing to keep in mind is that tariffs do bring in money, but the numbers tell an interesting story. Tariff revenue so far for 2025 has been around $195 billion total. That sounds like a huge number at first, but let's compare it to what this check would cost. If you gave $2,000 to every adult earning under $100,000, that works out to about 150 million people. That means the price tag would be around $300 billion, and that's just adults. It could be more if kids were included. So when you do the math, the revenue collected so far does not fully cover the cost. And that leads to the question a lot of economists have been raising. Where would the rest of the money come from? Or would the checks be smaller than $2,000? Or would the government just borrow the remaining amount? So, yeah, the math is something the administration would have to figure out before any checks could be issued. And since the tariff revenue so far doesn't cover the cost, that's why some analysts say the math doesn't line up yet. Now, something else people are curious about is who would qualify. Trump said middle income and moderate income Americans, but that's pretty generated with HTTPS, jercome.ait.